Facebook friends, Marianne here. Notice anything new? Yes, I have glasses. Actually, I got them because I have a very hard time being able to see signs at night. Ever since getting LASIK surgery, which saved me from going blind, so I'm very grateful. But it actually kind of made my astigmatism worse at night on road signs. So I'm practically on the sign before I can read it well. So these help me to see. So just thought I'd show them off. Anyway, the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys was I wanted to share with you, I guess you could say, a testimonial. Like a lot of you, sometimes I get, really frustrated because I've been working so hard to something and it's like, and when it becomes frustrating, that's when I've learned it's important to pause and just say to God, is this your will? Am I following a calling you've sent me? Or is this my ego? And trying to learn the difference between one's ego and one's calling can be really a lot, easier said than done. But what I found is when you invite Spirit, God, Yahweh, the goddess, whatever you want to call that great divine being, which permeates everything in our lives, when we surrender to it and we say, what is your will? Please, if this is what you want me to do, whether is this my fight that you want me to fight for? Is this my opportunity to be creative that you want me to create something with or for or who or, when whatever it is, when we say, is this your idea for me? Is this your dream? Is this your vision for me? And what you want me to do with all the many gifts and blessings that you've given me in my life? If we stop and we ask that and we really sincerely mean it, I find the universe often answers us. Now, the hard thing is sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is no, go the other way. And as I was sharing with my friends Ashley Burgess and Isabel the other night, when you get a no, sometimes that's a gift in disguise because looking back on it, there are certain people I thought I wanted to really collaborate with, opportunities I wished I could have had or whatever. And then, maybe it takes a few years and you find out, ooh, glad I didn't hook up with that person, hook up with that project. No. So a lot of times it's easy to forget that God has this incredible sight that we don't. Now, I know a lot of people get into that whole theological thing of, how if God knows all, sees all, can we have freedom of choice and versus destiny and everything? And I get people who actually send me questions about that. So I'm just going to tell you my personal theological belief. This is not from any one text or thing. That's just what I've experienced in my life. I believe in destined opportunity because I believe in a life in which we've signed up to accomplish something. And when I say accomplish something that we're giving to the world and something we're supposed to learn. And that I believe that our souls set the agenda, not our minds, not our desires, but what our soul needs in its evolution. Now, whether you believe in reincarnation, which I do, or you believe one stop, one time around, that's fine. But either way, it still works because it's about what the soul requires in order to evolve closer to becoming communion with the divine. So when we look at it that way, we realize, damn, our agenda is not that important when it comes from the brain, when it comes from lust, from desire. It's really what is the soul fulfilling so that it can evolve and become closer to Creator. And when you want to get really deep, I really truly believe that every one of us is an expression of creation. So as I was sharing with some friends recently, my friend Phyllis Karat, she was on something they call it the God Squad. It's a TV show up in New York, and it always has a priest and a rabbi, and they host different spiritual leaders. And so one time they had Phyllis. She was the head of the Department of World Religions at the time. She's a Wiccan priestess. Some of you may also know her because of her legal work. She's one of the main attorneys that fought to make it legal so that people who are in Arlington Cemetery that were not Jewish or Christian could have their symbol on it. So if a Native American died, they could have the symbol of the circle with the cross. You have the four directions. If it was someone who was Wiccan, they could have a pentacle. If it was someone who was Muslim, they could have their moon. In the past, it didn't matter what religion you were. You only had two choices. So you had to basically lie about what religion you were if you wanted to be buried there. And soldiers put themselves on ice, or families did, and they were frozen for years without being buried until Phyllis and many other attorneys won that case. And that was, I think, one of the reasons why the God Squad invited her. They wanted to ask, see, okay, since a number of these soldiers that had been frozen to be buried in Arlington Cemetery because many of them had earned the Purple Heart, et cetera, well, what do we, let's know a little bit more about you. So they asked her, they said, well, what for you, let's give you a metaphor. In the Judeo-Christian Muslim, basically Abraham faith belief, they say God is a potter. He made a pot and he set it over here. And now, and let's just, to make things easier, I'm always with a cup of tea. Most of my friends know. So God made a pot. God knows everything in the pot, everything under the pot, so everything around the pot. God made this pot. Knows all, sees all, is all. So based on this metaphor, what is the difference? And what Phyllis said is, well, if we want to go with that metaphor, then we have to look at it as in the beginning, there is nothing. There is only God. Okay? Divinity, spirit, whatever you call it. So the only place to draw a clay from was God's spirit. Which means that, yes, God knows all, sees all, but is also all things, meaning that the clay came of spirit. And that's very much what I believe in many ways, because when I look around, I believe that every animal has a soul. I believe the rock has a soul. I believe leaves, the winds have a soul. Kind of like what, the way St. Francis said, brother sun, sister moon, brother winds, brother, just all that. In the Canticle of the Sun, he looks at all the elements as brothers and sisters to us. So not to be worshipped, but to be respected as beings that we may not comprehend, but they are in existence because they came from the same creator that created us and our souls. So when we understand things that way, then we start going, okay, wow. So if I am an expression of the divine, why am I here? And that's when you go way back to that thing where I always say, it's like, if you can imagine Moses having the attitude of a drag queen, kind of like, girl. And so he's up on top of that mountain and God says, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't exist. And that smart, alecky, drag queen kind of attitude goes, well, if it weren't for me, no one would know you exist. You imagine saying that to God? I can't. But anyway, so that very funny exchange, there is humor in biblical text. We often kind of ignore it. And when you start looking at that, you think, oh, wow, people were kind of using humor to teach back then. They had some pretty quick wits. But when we think about that, the deeper theological thing is, what is our life about? It is about spirit coming to experience life and therefore expanding upon itself, its knowledge through each of our experiences. So what is God as you? Fill in the blank with your name, Yvonne, Yvette, Christian, Isles, Ashley Burgess, Isabel Rossignol, Tono Tew, I could go on, Rabayana, all my friends, Lawrence Bloom, any people out there, people that love me, hate me, whatever. Put your name in there. You are spirit experiencing itself as, put your name there. And then really pause and think about that. When you taste a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, your spirit enjoying that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Being able to look at itself, understand itself through that experience. When you go out under the brisk air and you feel this fall invigoration, or else you're freezing to death like Anthony and we were out there recently in Gunter, Texas, we were God experiencing freezing cold. When we experience love, therefore, or anger, therefore, or fear, or compassion, empathy, we are God experiencing that. And when we receive that, we are receiving that from spirit. When we are petting our dog and receiving the love of that, or a cat, or, I have a pet turtle, or, all these different things, we are experiencing love between that and ourselves. And when you go deeper and you understand that, oh, that clay, metaphorically, that shaped my soul is the same clay that shaped that spirit that's inside a tree, that's inside a baby that's just been born, that's inside my pet, that's inside the air, that's inside the sun, that's inside the moon when you dance under it at night, that's inside all the experiences when you take a sip of wine, when you take a drink of water when you're parched. All those things also came from that clay, that soul that everything came from. And when we understand that, we are spirits, swimming, breathing, walking, bipedal organisms made of stardust that are walking around like bipedal organic batteries that are actually just suits for spirit getting to know itself. So what are our purpose here? To not just to know yourself, but to remember ourselves, to remember who you are. Now, I know I ticked off a Maori woman when I was speaking in New Zealand earlier this year because I was up on stage and I'm speaking to a gathering. I said, and one of the things I said is remember who you are. And when I say that, I mean, remember all that you came into this world to be. You have a voice, you have a passion, you have an insight, you have loads of experiences that only you perceived the way only you could, because you came through a perception that came through a set of lenses that was a prescription designed by all the things, all the baggage, all the pain, all the inspiration, all the achievements, all the happiness, all the joy, all the experience of life create that prescription. And we see through it our lives. We experience through our lives. And when we do that, that is spirit getting to know itself through you. And when you realize each of our lives is no greater or more important than that, that is an extraordinary realization. So, right now, when I've been in part where I was going, oh my God, I had this vision. I wanted to create this campus for humanity. I really felt like Xochicalco, which is a ancient university where all the Native Americans used to gather and go. And it was a place where, kind of like our modern day Olympics, where when, it didn't matter who was at war with each other, the warfare ended when you knew you were going this place, except instead of athletics, it was about the exchange of knowledge, just for the purpose of helping mankind to evolve. And I was like, oh, when I stood there, it's outside Cuernavaca. Oh my God, I have the world, meaning all the Americas from Alaska to, all the way down to Argentina and everything in between. There's proof. You can see artifacts. We've even brought in a friend of mine, Lama Tenzin Doden, who's the ambassador of compassion to the world for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And he recognized Tibetan, Siberian snow leopards there. I mean, we brought people from Africa and they recognized things there. So, this was an ancient university where people let bygones be bygones, just so they could say, how do we improve our lives? How do we help evolve humanity? And the symbol of that place was a butterfly. And the exciting thing about that is when someone wore this, it didn't matter if their tribes were fighting someone else, the other tribe would go, oh, they have that symbol, let them pass, feed them, clothe them, let them pass, because whatever they share is going to eventually help us. So if you can imagine, that was the days before we had all of the social media. Half the world did this. And with this technology, that came out of it was, running water, hot and cold water. They had the means to do things like x-rays where you could, instead of shadow, like you can see my shadow here, you could see bones in there. They could diagnose broken bones. They used huge magnets to diagnose brain tumors. They did the most amazing things in this place. And I went, my God, if half the world did this here and they didn't have what we have, then we can do this. And not only can we, but we need to, because right now I feel like all the technology that's happening in the world, that's the hardware. What's missing is the software, the heart, the soul, which is the very purpose that all of us on this earth are for. And so I've always felt, since I was a little kid, that this was the most important thing I could do with my life, was to do this. And as some of you know who are closest to me, I've been on this soul calling God since I was a little kid. And my dad would say to me, this is because this is what you were signed up to do in the world. And people always ask me, how did you get adopted into the 7-Eleven family? And I would tell them, the truth, which was I was born May 14, 1977 at 7:11 a.m. on Mother's Day. And they just said, okay, she's meant to go with that family. So, as people get sick and tired of hearing me say, when you know that every advantage, every opportunity came because of nothing that you on your own did, and you being given this, it makes all those opportunities feel more like a responsibility. And as I tell people all the time, I put my mindset back there. What if I hadn't been born in that perfect moment to be gifted with these opportunities in my life? if I was back there struggling with my stigmatism and I hadn't had the LASIK, so I'd gone completely blind, so I couldn't read lips to be able to hear like I rely on today, hence why I got my degree online, all these things that I've had to do to compensate. I was able to adapt to that and still pursue my degree because of the advantages of living in this country and the tax bracket that I live in. These are the things that made a huge difference for me. And when I look at all of that, knowing that I did nothing to earn it, I can't ever for one moment feel entitled to any opportunity. But what I can feel is 100% responsible for what I do with it. And maybe it's, and that's why I had to ask God, was this an ego thing to feel that? Or was this listening to a calling? Was this an ego thing to say I wasn't put in this position just for my own enjoyment? Was it an ego thing to say, I was put here to do something that matters to help people in this world? And that's what this is about. I've chosen to believe that in my life. And maybe that's silly. Maybe that's stupid. I know there are people out there that say that all that is ridiculous. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, it came down to, am I listening to my ego or am I listening to a divine calling? I've had so many synchronicities in my life, and it's way too much for me to ignore. So, sitting down and praying and say, okay, God, I am burnt out. And some of you know I took this very long trip with Joshua. We went down to Mexico. I spent time with my spiritual teacher, Ricardo Cervantes, Alois Kimpitacutli, spiritually a Toltec down there. And I'm so grateful he's going to be coming up and joining us around Thanksgiving. But when I was down there, I really spent time and listened to them. And, it was a reminder when I go in those markets, this could have been my life. What would I be wishing somebody would do who was privileged to improve it and others like me? And so when I look at myself and go, how can I do something? How can I make that kind of difference? And again, is it ego to believe that I've been put in this privileged position to do something significant? Or is it a calling? So I started looking back at this recurring dream I'd had and how my father had told me this was given to me to accomplish. And I started thinking, well, maybe my ego is saying it must take this specific form. And maybe what I need to do is step back and say, God, Spirit, Yahweh, Amatul, whatever you want to call it, I will be humble enough to be flexible. Maybe what I was supposed to receive from Chicago was inspiration. But the format that takes is what you, Spirit, will co-create with me. And I surrender to whatever that is. And I know a lot of people get kind of wince when I say surrender, but it's true. When you surrender your will to that divine being that's greater than all of us, you start co-creating. Because it's not releasing the reins, because you're still responsible for what you do. You're still responsible for your actions. You're still responsible for following up on inspiration. And you're still responsible sometimes for creating inspiration when you don't feel it. And we're still responsible for going, hey, God, I feel like crap down here. Help me out. And that was kind of what I was doing. I'd had one of the worst seizures in my life. I'd gone to the ER. I was in excruciating pain. Part of me was just exhausted. And I finally, and I was called out on it. Thomas, who I think, in my life, there are many, many things that I feel I need to do and accomplish to try and do my part to help the world. And I don't say this lightly because I meet a lot of people. But one of the most important things I think I can do with my life is helping to promote Thomas Q. Johns, because he is a genius with a heart. And what he does in his life is going to change the world. I truly believe that about him. So when he called me on, he said, Marianne, you need to let yourself be more vulnerable. You need to let yourself come out there and say to people, I need your help to make this happen because I'm getting burnt out. And I did that. And I said it to God, I said it to Spirit, I prayed, and then I said it to my board, and I shared it with some close friends. But I didn't go in deep detail about just what a dark night of the soul I was in, because I was truly on the verge of almost wanting to give up. And part of it was feeling torn because I've been working on all this, and yet at the same time needing to openly talk about the human rights issues that are going on in our country. Because I can't ignore the fact that as someone with a handicap, I don't think of it that way because I've always had a hearing loss, but it is a handicap. But as someone who deals with that, and then who also has brown skin, who's a bi woman, and we're living in this time where we have a president that makes fun of handicapped people, that's arguing to get rid of accessibility laws that makes it easier for people like that. I mean, just to put it in perspective, when I'm at the airport and I need to get my luggage, at left field, and those screens aren't working, and I go up to somebody and said, which where? And they said, oh, it'll be announced. I said, you don't understand. That sounds like a Charlie Brown adult dream. When I can't hear that, I'm just looking for faces that I recognize on the plane. That's how I find my luggage. But that can multiply the time there at the airport for much longer trying to find a simple luggage. So when I talk about accessibility, it's not just about ramps. It's about things that allow people like me to be able to get around in this world and live independent lives. So, feeling the rhetoric from the president against brown-skinned people, the empowerment of people like Stephen Miller that say they want to get rid of the browning of America, seeing the children in cages and people, and when I say that I want to do something, having comments like, well, we'll just line all you Mexicans up against the wall and shoot you down, and, that takes care of that problem. I mean, those kinds of things, they hurt. They really hurt. They're toxic. The LGBT community is hurting as well. And I know a friend of mine was saying, rolling their eyes because he overheard someone say it's never been this hard for LGBT people before. And you're right. It was a lot harder in the past. But right now, with the level of hate crimes and the attack on those accomplishments all these generations have made for LGBT human rights, for women's rights, for people of color's rights, all these different demographics for handicapped people's rights, that being attacked, it's depressing. And I've been in a position where a lot of people are like, well, I can't speak out because I'll get fired. So I constantly look at myself and go, okay, well, I can't get fired, so I have a responsibility to speak out. And I know a friend of mine, Kalu, was saying, why do you care so much about all this stuff? And I'm like, because they're human beings. It's not just, I'd be doing the same thing if those children in cages didn't look like me. But because I look like them and they're being persecuted in large part because of their race, let's be honest, I know that if I've achieved anything that has accomplished anything in this world, and that speaks for the potential of every one of those children in there. And right now, our nation has 75 children incarcerated, and the UN just called us on having the nation with the most incarcerated children. That is horrendous. And people are hunky-dory with it. And that is horrendous. So yeah, I've been having a dark night of the soul and trying to figure out, why are people losing the ability to see their common humanity? And then I called myself on it. I was speaking with two different people recently that are, I would say, were pretty much white supremacists. And they were very angry and they said some horrendous things to me. And of course I wanted to react like, because, energy is energy. You want to react in kind. Every action has an opposite equal reaction. But we can alchemically choose how our reaction is going to play out. So instead of getting all angry, I said, well, tell me why you feel this way. What led to this? What led to that? And I started hearing the story of these, both of them were white males, young white males who had not had the opportunities. And every time they saw an opportunity for a scholarship, and then later when they got older, an opportunity for small business loans, all these things were geared to women or minorities. So their whole life they felt persecuted for the sins of the father, basically, for the sins of some grandfather, great-grandfather who had been a bigot, and therefore these opportunities that were there for minorities were not there for them. And that made them resentful. They felt unseen and unheard. So when Trump said, I see you and your voice matters, your feelings matters, your aspirations matter, that's what they resonated with. And so I could understand that. So putting aside all of my self-righteousness, I said, well, I disagree with you basically on 99% of everything you believe. But let me tell you this. I hear you and you matter. That was a shock to them. And after the El Paso shooting, I heard from these two gentlemen and they said to me, are you okay? Are you alive? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we were so worried. They don't even know each other. But after that, then they told me, I was with some friends the other night and I said, you can't say that about all bi women, or you can't say that about all brown people, or you can't say that about all women, or blah, 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 or handicapped people, whatever. Because you know what? I know one, and she really gave a shit about me. She cares about me. And I realized, while it's so hard, and I hear you, minorities, I hear you, I feel it the same way. you get the same, well, why do we always have to be the bigger person? Believe me, I feel you. I feel you. It gets tiring. Again, burnout. But the reason I share that with you is in that is some of the way in which we can change our world. So I don't know how many of you are listening to this, and I told you this was a testimonial, hence why it's long. But one of the reasons why I'm sharing all this information with you is it was all of these experiences that I got on my knees and I prayed and then I danced. A lot of times when I pray, I don't just meditate sitting still or pray on my knees with my hands clasped. I dance vigorously for hours. And I'm like, God, take my prayer, feel my prayer, whatever, let me give this to you. Let me know, what do you want? And the techno's going, the moonlight's coming in. I'm saying, tell me what you need. Tell me, the sweat's coming out of my pores. I give this to you. This is my gift to you, my surrender to you. Show me. And would you know, my friend Suleiman Hamadi, a local leader within the Ismaili community, and that morning he said, do not wait. When will your vision move forward? The world needs this. We do it now. My friend Kalu, who's, from, his father's the chief of the Igbo tribe, he said, I have connections. We can make this happen now. I had another friend who said, I want to give you the opportunity to receive this land I'm going to donate for you. I look up and then my friend Quinn Cho comes in and says, Marion, get to this luncheon. I go to the luncheon before I even enter. She said, all these women are going to know stuff about you because I went without your permission and met with them and told them you need to help Marianne get this thing done because her work's important for the world. I left that luncheon with people that believe in this vision. And then I could go on down the list. Johnny Mack has come into my life thanks to Reverend Peter Johnson. And he said, your voice is important. Let me help you. And it's come from so many directions. And it happened right when I was feeling the most hurt because it felt like being kicked in the gut when there is someone who is very integral to the vision of the Baptist Institute and to my life's work. And this person really betrayed me consistently over a course of about 3 years. And I had no idea that this person was hurting me and doing it intentionally in so many ways. And then I just found out, I thought it was just a mimicking. And then I found out, oh my God, this person had hurt me in Thompson-Frenk Inc. And it was just like, oh my God, it kicked me in the gut. It hurt. It still hurts. And if she's seeing this, I didn't block her. Yeah, you hurt me and I forgive you. But ow. But there's a blessing in that. Because in that hurt, I was even warned, one of the craziest things, my friend Isaac Tigert, he worked, with the Sai Baba. The Sai Baba passed away. This young boy, supposedly, they don't know if he's the reincarnation of the Sai Baba or if he's channeling or whatever. But he told, Isaac, go find Marianne and tell her this information. This was a few years ago. And I'm lecturing with Keith Critchlow in London, the Temenos Academy. And I get this, an hour before I'm in the hotel. And I get this message that says, there's a man here that needs to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And I go in there and there's Isaac. And I have no idea how he found me. And he tells me the boy told him where I was. I mean, find a random person in London, you don't know where they are, you have no phone number, really, the chances of that. And then he told me a number of things, that the vision was important, that it was confirmed, don't lose hope, and that there are specific people that were going to end up hurting. And he said they were, 3 women. And wow, he was right. So, that's what I mean. The synchronicities I've received in my life, warnings, blessings, they keep coming. And right when I thought, is this all been made up? Am I really crazy? Is all this work to try and make a difference? Is it making any difference? Do people give a shit? There are people that get so much more out there, and we weren't getting the kind of donations or support that I really wish that we could get more of in order to serve more people. And I was just at my wit's end. And all these things have started happening again. And that fire, that desire to fulfill what feels like a calling and to surrender and say, God, use me. I am the pen, not the writer. I am the clay, not the sculptor. guide my mouth, guide my hands, guide my choices in life. And Spirit is. So there's my testimony. And I know many of you are having your own dark nights of the soul. And so that's why I wanted to come off raw and real and tell you in a nutshell. And believe me, I'm writing a whole book called Southland that shares this whole story, as well as, the stories of my grandparents and both sides of family and my parents and how it led, because the synchronicities even go generationally. Things that one generation did, determine what another did. And we all think that we choose things on our own, and we had no idea just how influenced we are. So there's a dance that's being done intergenerationally. And God sees that beautiful braid that we're all just a strand of. So I wanted to share all this with you because this has been the journey that I've been on this year. And this year is ending on a great note of hope. And I'm grateful for it. And yeah, there's still battles. There's crazy battles. As I've told a number of my friends recently who are dealing with their own stuff, when we start getting close to what Spirit wants us to be doing with our lives, we start having a lot of challenges, because that's the seduction. Let's seduce them away from what they're supposed to be doing. Let's distract them. Let's pull them away. And it's not a bad thing. It's a test. It's a test of your convictions. It's a test of your integrity. It's a test of your passion. And when you start losing it and you think, I don't have any more energy or resources to put towards something, and you start getting white hair like I have, when you start getting, in that position, and you can finally surrender and say, God, what do you want of me? Show me and use my life. It's in that moment that the seed opens up and real roots take place. It's in that moment when the seed is screaming, going, ow, something's breaking from within, it hurts, that it's actually sprouting up from through the darkness in the ground and becoming a flower or a tree or a blade of grass. All of us will be different. All of us will live different lives with different purposes. But if you're in a place like I've been, believe me, it's the universe co-creating with you. And the best prayer you can do is say, Spirit, help me discern the difference between my ego and my calling. Help me discern the difference between what my soul needs and requires to help you experience yourself through me versus what my mind and body want. Now, there are times where both, they can all sync up. And the happiest person is the person that gets them to sync up the majority of the time. My dad used to say, happiness is never being happy about where you are, but happy about where you're going. And that doesn't necessarily mean achievement. It means being happy about the direction in which your spirit, your soul, is coming into communion with God. So, we can talk about communion being so many different things, but for me, it's always been the path that my soul is on to be reunited with Spirit. So a lot of you, talk about your Christianity all the time. I respect you. I am not Christian, but in the theological doctrine of Christianity, it would be the idea of Teilhard de Chardin's new sphere, the idea of the grand communion of a soul coming back home to be one with the divine. It would be the sacred marriage of the Song of Solomon. And the Jewish tradition, it would be Yahweh and the Shekhinah. The coming together, individual souls, all each individually forming into that original crystal, that Shekhinah that sat on top of the Ark of the Covenant, that I would have no place to sit unless the archangels on top of the covenant were facing each other, and they could only face each other when humanity is recognizing their common humanity. Hence that fact that same soul, that same great spirit is what animates all of us. We could go on down the line. There's many metaphors in all traditions. But the point is that however you understand it, this is the path that we're all on. Surrender to it and miracles happen. So I want to thank all of you who have played a role recently in helping to lift my spirit up and helping me to be motivated to move ahead. I want to especially thank Gregory Gomez, who means the world and whose presence in this journey has been with me all the way. My husband, Joshua Frank, my friend, Isabel Rosignol, recent friends like Peter Johnson, of course, Philip Collins, Anthony Chisholm, Alan Keith, Joel Flores, Leslie, just my seer who who calls me on my shit, and so many others. Lawrence Bloom, who made amazing connections, and everybody else out there who I've named or not named, who've played roles. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. I'm Matilda. These are the things I'm thankful for this Thanksgiving, and I'm thankful for each of you.